Welcome to ThinkTech on Spectrum OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Cynthia Sinclair.
In our show this time, we'll review some of the recent episodes of Trump Week, a popular new weekly series on ThinkTech.
Trump Week is dedicated to following the events in the Trump presidency and connecting the dots, the sea changes, and the new normal in our struggling democracy.
The hosts for Trump Week are Tim Apicella, Cynthia Sinclair, and on occasion, me, Jay Fidell.
Given all the activity and the chills and spills we've had in Washington, for this show, we've chosen excerpts from various episodes of the Trump Week series. Here are the clips we've selected.
The real question is, what does Mueller know? What kind of activities has he found Trump guilty of that could lead to impeachment? I mean, I believe he has things, but what?
Well, did he get information that the oversight committees of the House that basically prevented from getting some of these documents and records? Has he gotten access to them? Did Mueller get access to the phone company to find out who was called for that Trump Tower meeting? Because the oversight committee in the House certainly tried to get it. They couldn't.
Yeah.
So has Mueller seen his tax returns, and are there correlations to his tax returns?
Well, I don't think Mueller has his tax returns.
Well, okay, so the question is, how can Mueller come out with his report when some of these critical issues need to be, or critical pieces of information need to be put in the piece of the puzzle? Do we now have to wait for the House of Representatives to start getting these documents through subpoena?
I don't think we'll have to wait too long. They're certainly going to subpoena his records, his tax returns. There was an interesting piece in, I guess, the morning paper about the fact that his family, Jared Kushner and the son, they're actively involved, and really it's him, in building hotels where? In red states, where he succeeded in the election. They're building Trump hotels. They're not successful, but they're building them. It's remarkable what's going on, and we need to tie it together, because he doesn't really make a line between government and his personal business. And I think Mueller is going to get into that.
Well, I think once this really comes out, you will. In fact, even Speaker Pelosi said, "Look, it is premature to talk about impeachment." She said it's going to separate the party.
She said we have to wait for Mueller.
We have to wait, and I've been saying that for the last few weeks. And until you really see some really substantial high crimes and misdemeanors, we shouldn't be talking about it. Really shouldn't.
But the press should be figuring out what they're finding, and the press should be reporting it to us, because I think there's a lot of information out there that has not really come to the surface. It may be in the press, but it may not be at the surface because it's being subject to all the distractions. The oxygen is being sucked out in what he wants to be the headlines.
How many distractions will we see when the Mueller report does come out? That's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
how many, how many multitude of distractions will be played out in order to take the attention off this report?
The more heat, the more the distraction. So if things really got tough, I think he would somehow stimulate some protests, some violence, and then declare martial law. That's a great fear. And then all of a sudden, the Mueller report would be on page 3. As a shadow over my perception of the world and the reality and the country and the future. We're diving down into a dark place, and our system can't handle it. They say, oh, the Constitution will weather any storm. I'm not sure. He can create a war overnight for another distraction.
Well, and this gets back to my concern, as you had General Mattis and you had John Kelly as bookends, if you will, to kind of try to balance him out.
Both gone.
And they're both gone. So the replacement issue, what is the qualifications for the replacement? Certainly not competence. No. Certainly not experience in a particular job role. It comes down to loyalty.
Loyalty, which means yes men. So the government is being remade in Trump's image.
Correct.
It's being remade out of yes men. And it's not just the people in the White House, it's the department heads and all that. So what you have is people leave, and it's not just in the White House, leaving from other parts too. I would leave, honestly. I couldn't tolerate this if I was in that administration. So they leave, and then they are replaced by yes men, okay? And at the end of the day, what you have is a yes man government that doesn't do anything. So we've really lost the value of having all these offices. And then at the same time, we've lost the value of having representative government in the
there
Congress.
it is, because if the executive branch starts going off on an extreme left turn, you would hope that the Senate and the House of Representatives would stand up on their own two hind legs and say, look, we got to steer back onto course here.
Yeah.
And we're not quite getting that. I saw a glimpse of it, though. I saw glimmers and hope.
Feels like he's at the end of his tether, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel that way?
He doesn't think so.
No, he doesn't. He'll double down.
Yeah.
And the people who like double down, they'll hang in with him.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have got to be questioning what he's doing.
Now, these requests for documents always take time. And of course, these committees have been denied because they weren't in control of the House of Representatives, certainly not over these committees. So Elijah Cummings, who has been in the House of Representatives for a long time, he's now the oversight chair, as you mentioned, and he's going to specifically focus in on a few things. One is he wants to find out a little bit more about Hurricane Maria and how that affected, or how we did not respond to Puerto Rico as well as we might have.
Oh, yeah.
Number two, he's going to look at the how we came to the family separations during the southern border.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to look at the misconduct of government officials. Specifically, remember Tom Price from the Human Services and all his private jets and things. And how did that happen? Look, maybe those aren't earth-shattering investigations, but he's going to at least request these from the EPA, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Health and Human Services. I think bottom line is he's going to really look at payments from foreign governments to the Trump organizations and how that did or did not work its way into the election. So these are 51 letters he sent to the head of all these agencies and getting documents that he's been previously denied. So when this stuff starts to trickle back in, we'll see how that affects the news cycle. I think it will.
What this tells me, and maybe you have more information on it, but we see Trump stonewalling, for example, on his tax returns, and we see him calling a war on the press and calling the press names and manipulating the press conferences and even who can appear at a press conference. But I think there's something else too. His agencies are shutting down on the press. They don't tell you. They don't tell you what they're doing. They don't tell you why they're doing it. These are his appointees. So I think the war on the press goes further than what we see in his nasty remarks about and to the press. I think it's that part of the government that he controls is shutting down on giving information. These items that you mentioned, ideally the press would have been able to cover those items before. Why did we do this and why did we do that? What was the background? What was the process? But I have a feeling they couldn't get any information. So that's why the House Oversight Committee is so important. They're doing work that maybe the press should have been able to do before had there been openness and transparency in the Trump government.
Well, remember, he's replacing everyone that felt they had a duty to honor what their mission statement is for that agency. But now, even though they were appointed by him, they have disappointed him, okay, because they're doing what their mission was, and that is to be a steward of that agency. Yeah. But remember, the top priority is not your mission to the agency. Your top priority is loyalty to the President of the United States.
That's the way it seems to be
working.
And
so now that seems to be the way it's working, because you're right, there is a bottleneck of information that's coming out, and no one's really knowing what's going on in our government, not as well as we ought to or how we used to. Yeah. Again, when's the last time we've seen a press conference with Sarah Sanders? It's been a while.
Sarah Sanders, unfortunately, she lies. And we all know that she lies.
I know, but you at least want to have the opportunity to find out what she's lying about.
I mean, I don't feel the press has access to sufficient information to report on so many things, and I don't feel the public is as informed as it should be. And I think we are living in a dark age in terms of public information and transparency of the government. And I mean, we're seeing even though we see it all day long, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and so forth, and the Guardian, one article after another about him and the machinations of his administration. But I still think we don't get enough information.
When's the last time you saw a press conference? A long time ago, right?
Right.
So that means all these agency heads are starting to speak about the topic. Well, guess what? Some of them have no business getting in front of a camera. And so what we start seeing is people making these horribly insensitive comments about those who are been laid off.
Right.
And I'll just go through a
Just
couple
go get
of them.
a loan. Go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Trump saying
So,
that.
You know, even before the shutdown, when President Trump went to the Rose Garden, I'll distinctly remember this. A reporter said, "Mr. President, what about the safety net for these employees if they, you know, if they're furloughed or they're, you know, they're not going to get a
Right.
paycheck?" And President Trump looked at the reporter and said, "You mean the safety net, the wall, that safety? Because, you know, we're making America safe again." And so here was the reporter talking about a safety net to take care of the families,
Right.
and, you know, the fact that they don't have a paycheck to pay their bills. And Donald Trump took that opportunity to say the wall is their safety.
Right.
And he tied it back into the wall, completely dismissing what's going to happen and did happen in the forthcoming 35 days.
Right.
So there's the opening salvo of kind of an obtuse look at the impact to these federal employees.
Always throughout when he says things like just go to your bank and get a loan. They
Well,
know
that was
going along. He said the banks are going along, the grocery stores are going along.
Yeah,
Those
and
were
then-
his exact words. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding
Well,
me.
and landlords will go along. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the landlords are going. They're all going along. Everybody's going along because
Yeah, well,
everybody's behind
not
this
so much, not
wall,
so much.
which is really not true
And
at
then
all.
we had Wilbur Ross, talk about statements of lack of empathy. He said, and, you know, if you watch the statements, I don't really understand why they're going to food banks.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You know, and then he started, going on, well, they can get a loan, like a 30-day payday loan.
Right.
God
Why
knows
can't
what
they?
the interest rates are at those, 45%,
They're
50%.
so horrible.
I mean, they're
It's ridiculous.
They should
are.
be illegal, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
A 30-day payday loan should be illegal. So here's Wilbur Ross going, well, first off, I don't know why they're going to food banks. I have no idea why they would do that. And then what's the big deal? They could just go get a 30-day, he didn't say 30-day payday
Right.
loan, but he's saying they can get, basically a loan, a short-term
Right.
loan based off their paycheck.
Right.
I mean,
Just-
how
just
obtuse is that?
Crazy.
That's obtuse.
There were lines down the streets for the food banks in Washington, D.C. And they were liking it to what it was like in Russia back in the day when everyone would have to stand in the food lines, and it's like,
pathetic.
what is this? This is America.
Yeah, it was
There's
pathetic to
no
watch.
excuse for this.
Yeah. And then later you had Larry Kudlow.
Right.
He's the director
Oh
of
my
Economic
gosh.
Council. He was talking about, how everyone's chipping in to, because they support the president and
Right.
that they're basically volunteering. They're volunteering. And then the reporter said, well, you can't be a volunteer when you're forced to work and get no pay. That's not volunteering.
No,
And he
it's
just said,
not.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But so you're seeing examples of high-level officials being
Right.
so blind to the plight of these federal workers. And of course, like I said before, it's not just the federal workers, but it's all the businesses that support the federal workers. When you get your agenda set by Fox and Friends every morning, it's no wonder that whatever Vladimir Putin is going to say is, the second part of your agenda is being set. He's, between the Inquirer, Fox and Friends, and God knows what he hears on the telephone line from Putin. Who knows what he's taking in as gospel fact?
His past is catching up with him, but we
past
don't
is
know
catching
it all yet. We don't know about the Steele dossier, about what he was
Well,
doing.
they try to discredit that 100%, but it can't be discredited
I don't
100%.
discredit. You discredit that? I mean, it sounds all very
Well, that's-
possible for me.
Yeah.
Guy was an intelligence agent. I think the only point of discredit, it was done at the request and probably at the expense
Dems.
of the Democrats.
Democrats,
It
yeah.
doesn't mean it's a lie.
Yeah.
It could be true.
Yeah.
I don't discredit it. I think it's true, or at least large parts of it are true.
So I'm going back to the first part of this conversation is of distraction of the distraction. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to see more of it.
Yeah.
It depends on to what degree he has to wedge himself out of the corner on the wall funding and what he actually gets as an agreement from the Democrats. I think something will happen. I don't know. Do you have any predictions on how long this is going to last?
Well, I wanted to ask you that. I mean, let me ask you about that. We talked about the time continuum, how we here in Trump Week ought to check back on how it was before. We also ought to look on how it will be later. And I think there are certain sea changes, short-term sea changes, that are emerging from the things we talk about. Number one is he's losing the support of the Republicans. Two is the Democrats are pretty solid in their opposition to the wall.
I think he sees
I think
that.
a lot of people in government are in opposition to his shutdown, and for that matter, you know, the tariffs. These things are showing themselves as not to be sustainable, and therefore the double down thing that he does is showing itself to be not sustainable. And so you see this is all fraying, right? And you see he's doing more bizarre things, more unbelievable distractions, and all the while, Mueller going forward. Mueller, who may have smoking guns galore. We're going to find that out. And I guess the question is, if we're looking at the direction of all of this right now, it seems to me that the direction is, in my view, positive. In other words, he's getting found out. The reality is coming in. The negative is that he's taking more and more control, a la dictatorship kind of control of the United States government.
Well, that's why the national emergency bugs me a little bit.
Big deal,
Yeah,
right.
that bugs me, because to what degree do you start just declaring a national emergency for every 20 seconds? You know, this is an emergency, that's an emergency. I'm not getting cooperation from the Democrats on this issue, that's an emergency. In fact, Fox and Friends made a very funny comment. They didn't like this national emergency idea. And they said, well, what's to prevent a future Democratic president from saying climate change is a national emergency and start doing all sorts of institutional changes on a presidential basis of authority?
You know, that would be defensible. It is a national emergency. It's
So I think that's
the most
why-
important thing of all, and Trump doesn't care anything about it.
And I think that's why a lot of Republicans going, well, you know, not so fast here on this national emergency business, because it's kind of like the getting rid of the Senate, the ability to filibuster.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't want to get rid of that, because we know someday we're not going to be in charge of the Senate. We know someday it's going to be, you know, it's going to be the Democrats that have this.
Yeah.
So we're going to want to have that option. And so if we get rid of that, what's that going to mean for us during that 4 or 8 years in the future? It's no different for about a national emergency of declaring it willy-nilly and having it come back to haunt you 4 or 8 years later.
The other sea change, I think it's worthy to stop on this one, is democracy and the Constitution in general, and the way we have done government in this country, and the way we are, way that's declining, depreciating, fragmenting right now. And that's a sea change really to watch, because that's the most dangerous sea change of all, short of climate change, of course.
Right.
That's the one that could bring us down, and in bringing us down, it could bring the whole world down.
And he's already chipping away at it.
And he's chipping away
in
at it.
very, very different areas.
I suppose that candidates lie from time to time. We know that, but my understanding is that this lie was such that it was an obstruction. This lie was criminal, even though he wasn't president yet, because he was making a lie of that nature while he was on campaign, and that he took the presidency on the basis of a lie. So this is getting pretty serious.
Well, I think his tax returns, if the new House of Representatives has the authority to actually get his tax returns, a lot more will be known.
Yeah.
And who knows if Robert Mueller already has those tax returns? We don't know, because his report's not out yet.
We know that Robert Mueller has the answers to his questions.
Right.
And there's a whole timing thing there about just exactly how many lies are in those answers.
Right. Representative Swalwell was on this morning, and I was watching what he was saying, and he's also on the Intelligence Committee. And he's talking about their first order of business is to subpoena all of the records that were not allowed. The Republicans wouldn't allow them. The Democrats kept wanting to do it. They're going to bring back people that they didn't get to question because the Republicans would not let them.
You can find all the episodes for Trump Week in the Trump Week playlist on our YouTube channel. And you can watch them live at 11 a.m. every Friday morning on ThinkTechHawaii.com.
Trump Week is only one of our 35 weekly talk shows on ThinkTech. There are, of course, many more. To see them all, go to ThinkTechHawaii.com or YouTube.com/ThinkTechHawaii. Great diversity, great community, great content at ThinkTech.
And if you'd like to make a commentary yourself, to raise public awareness on issues and events in Washington or otherwise affecting our lives in these islands, you can write to shows@ThinkTechHawaii.com.
If you have any questions or comments about Trump Week or any of our shows, please let us know. And yes, it's okay to share them with your friends and colleagues. Thanks so much for watching and for supporting our efforts at ThinkTech.
And now let's check out our ThinkTech schedule of events going forward.
ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays. Then we broadcast our earlier shows all night long and on the weekends. And some people listen to them all night long and on the weekends.
If you missed a show, or if you want to replay or share any of our shows, they're all archived on demand on thinktechhawaii.com and YouTube. For our audio stream, go to thinktechhawaii.com/audio. And we post all our shows as podcasts on iTunes.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and live stream and YouTube links. Or better yet, sign up on our email list and get our daily email advisories.
ThinkTech has a high-tech green screen studio at Pioneer Plaza. If you want to see it or be part of our live audience, or if you want to participate in our programs, contact shows@thinktechhawaii.com. If you want to pose a question or make a comment during a show, call 808-374-2014 and help us raise public awareness on ThinkTech.
Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We'd like to know how you feel about the issues and events that affect our lives in these islands and in this country. We want to stay in touch with you. We'd like you to stay in touch with us. Let's think together. We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech, but first we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Cynthia, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on Spectrum OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Cynthia does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a host, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech family and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and global awareness in Hawaii. And of course, the ongoing search for innovation and for sea changes in the evolution of our democracy. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Cynthia Sinclair. Aloha, everyone.